you know, when all else fails, wiggle or shut it down and restart it, right?
Crazy out there.
I was talking.
It's a lot of it.
There's a couple of guys that have never left Seldovia. Long gone now.
Oh.
Tim Bill was telling me about
I,
it. Never left.
I've known a few, yeah.
Yeah, never left.
Mhm.
Not even at home.
Are you trying to get during record?
Oh, yeah.
Seldovia.
Okay.
All right, Madam Chair, we are
Okay. I'd like to call this, the meeting of the Seldovia Planning Commission to order. It is 6:01 on April the 15th. And then if the clerk could do the roll call.
Commissioner Forsberg,
Here.
Commissioner Kroll,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan,
Here.
and Commissioner Sweet.
Here.
We have all four members present. Welcome back in person, Al.
And if I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a move.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg. And if I could get a second.
I will second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. And if the clerk could take the roll.
Okay, for approval of the agenda, Commissioner Forsberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll,
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sweet.
Yes. And then item D, if I could get a motion to approve the minutes.
And I do apologize. I was supposed to bring back the February 4th minutes also. I failed to do that.
So do we have any minutes?
I have some draft ones.
Okay, so
No.
we can skip this item.
We have for March 4th.
Oh, we
yes.
do have for March 4th. Okay.
Some idea.
Do we have a minute? Do we have a minute to look at these minutes? No. Okay, so I guess we'll continue with the request for a motion to approve the agenda or sorry, the minutes from March 4th, 2026. Okay, that wasn't a trick question. It is, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 4th, 2026?
I'll make a move.
Thank you, Commissioner Forsberg. And could I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. And if the clerk could take the roll.
For the approval of minutes, Commissioner Forsberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll,
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sweet.
Yes.
We have 4 yeas. Motion passes.
And then do we have any public comments regarding items not on the agenda?
I'm not seeing any, no.
Okay. And we don't have any public hearings or prior notice. And then consideration of site plans. I think there's some site plan building permits are the same as site plans? No. Okay. So no site plans. And so that brings us to commission business. And the first item is comprehensive zoning review discussion on scope of work, and we'll turn that over to the city manager.
I'm sorry, this should be the city clerk, so I will defer to Liz.
Okay.
I almost got it. All right,
All
I'm
right.
gonna share my screen here. Let's. Yes. So on page 8 of your packet, you will find a draft scope of work and cost estimate from the Alaska Municipal League for assisting with our comprehensive zoning update. This is gonna trip me up each time. So if you recall from the last meeting, we had a resolution 2616. The city council directed the planning commission to conduct a comprehensive zoning review. And we left it that we were gonna reach out to AML, who helped us with the comprehensive plan, and ask for assistance on this. And they provided a scope of work and estimated costs and kind of a phase timeline and approach. And so wanted to go through the phases quickly. Phase 1 would be an initial zoning review. It would be an alignment review between the zoning code, the comprehensive plan, and housing goals. Kind of a snapshot of the existing land use patterns. And then a targeted review of residential uses that are permitted in commercial and industrial zones, because that was one of the things trying to clear up those uses. And then best practices, comparing ours to some APA guidance and other Alaska municipal examples. So that would be the first phase of it. The second phase would be an expanded pillar review. So, and this is all based on the pillars in the comprehensive plan that we address, the 6 pillars. And forgive me, do you remember what the 6 pillars are?
Yes, I believe it was land use, housing, transportation, resilience, community and social resources,
Economy.
and economy.
Yeah. So then kind of figuring out how that expands into the other pillars as Chair Sweet had suggested as a direction at our previous meeting. And then the third phase would be discussing overlay and development options, evaluating the potential of those overlay districts that we've talked about, or any kind of alternative zoning approaches, and recommendations for code clarity, usability, or internal consistency. And phase 4 would be review and meeting support. And they have in here up to 2 planning commission meetings, presentation and Q&A, and follow-up revisions based on planning commission and staff feedback. So that's kind of their scope of work that they've put together. I think the city manager Gagel and I noticed that like maybe public meeting or public portion of the process might be a good idea to include in that. And I did reply to them and ask if that could be, there's a possibility of including that in there, but I'm not sure what the commission's feedback would be on that. And the total estimated cost is not to exceed $5,000 on there. So just kind of wanted to put this before the commission and see if this approach and these phases worked, if you had any feedback on that kind of scope of work there, or anything in addition that you're not seeing that would like their assistance with.
I have a question. I guess phase 1, the snapshot of existing land use patterns. Is that like going around town and looking at what's existing and seeing how it fits with what the plan is, or?
How it fits with the current zoning districts is what I would.
But is that on site then? Kind of work?
Through the chair, I don't see any site visits in this scope. My assumption would be, and we can ask, that they would look at any variances, conditional uses, or grievances that we've received in the past many years compared to how properties are being utilized. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one thing we did review and discuss this earlier. And something that just occurred, that hadn't occurred to me earlier, that just occurred to me now, is what that if the assumption is that these tasks would be completed independently with, I would assume, staff feedback before they're presented. So it wouldn't, in reviewing this, it appears that these things would be happening internally in-house instead of with the body, and then they would come back to the body once they were prepared. which I guess makes sense. So, but that's something to think about is how much involvement you guys want and where the commission wants to be updated, or how much feedback you guys want to put into it.
Yeah, because it's one thing to look at it on a piece of paper and a whole nother thing when you're walking around the streets here and just being in the environment, I guess. So I think it would be really beneficial if they could have that more in person. Yeah, and then you talked about the public being involved too, that could happen at the same time, I guess.
Sure.
Of course, yeah. Okay. And what's APA? That was also in that first, in phase one,
It
best
is
practices.
The American Planning Association.
Oh,
Any other comments from the commissioners? So, I have a question as far as kind of what we expect in terms of deliverables. So kind of the way I'm looking at it right now, they're basically looking at gaps. This is what we say, and this is what our zoning code is, and their deliverable is to provide gaps or recommendations. Is that what we should be expecting to receive?
Yeah, my understanding is that we would receive the analysis and then recommendations or gaps that might be available, but it's mainly our existing zoning use now and how that compares to others and possibilities for
So, and then I guess sort of the endpoint, not necessarily for AML, but to be determined by whom, is that the zoning code would actually need to be updated. So we're basically creating a scope of work for future zoning updates. Am I getting that right? I mean, they're not going to be rewriting the zoning code to fix the gaps. They're going to identify a gap. They're going to do an analysis and identify the gaps. So I'm just trying to make sure that our expectations are clear in terms of what is it that we're going to get. And so if they're doing an analysis, then the way that we might be involved is then we would at some point in time be discussing the analysis and the gaps and the recommendations, and then we would look at, well, what do we think about those things? But the work that's being done here is really the analysis and the gaps. And then from there, it would be defining what the priorities were and a work plan on getting those done and how that might be done, what portions might be internal, what might be done by AML. But so this is like just it's a piece of the work that is what we would want to do, but it's not all of the work that we would be doing. Is that a good sort of
Yeah,
summary
that's
of
a
what's-
good summary and
Okay,
synopsis, as
okay.
I understand it.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be good to have them maybe some ideas too, besides just pointing out what's wrong?
Right, so they would identify gaps, provide recommendations, and then we'd have to discuss those, what, does that make sense? So we want to know what aren't we doing that we should be doing? And then what does that look like? Does that mean, a specific zoning code needs to be rewritten to include XYZ, and then do we agree, and whatever conversation needs to be had there, and then how do we get the feedback from our community so that if we're looking at changing things, that there's an awareness and agreement, and hopefully it should be fairly straightforward because we have the comprehensive plan that was given community feedback. So the comprehensive plan should be giving us a good idea of where we want to go. And then they would be looking at, well, how close to that are our zoning codes? And then what might we do to fix them so that we're able to more closely align with the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, and that's my understanding of it. And typically what I've seen done in other communities is the comprehensive plan is updated, and then following that, they start going through this zoning update. Valdez did it. I believe Homer is going through it now as well. So seeing if those align, seeing if maybe districts need to be combined or if they need to be updated within that. So this would be just the first stage of
Yeah.
the review, and then providing some recommendations as to how that might move forward that would align with the comprehensive plan. Is that your understanding, ladies?
That sounds great. And I'm looking under notes and assumptions, and it looks like deliverables include written memoranda or summary reports at the conclusion of each phase. So phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, you would get a update. And then I'm assuming we would present that at a meeting. So of course, we would invite the public there for that part of the process. And then with their intention to be up to 2 planning commission meetings, and we'll double check if that's in person or not. Because before they did do it in person, so maybe that is an on the ground opportunity. But hearing what Commissioner Ryan said, and making sure that some of that analysis is done on the ground. As well as, I guess, for me, it'd be helpful. I don't know if you have an idea, Clerk Diamond, of having those public meetings and having the public involved, of course, at the end of each phase. But is there a place here, or is it even necessary? Maybe that's something to ask them, since we've had the feedback from the comprehensive plan of when, if there needs to be a targeted approach, like a survey or something. I say that hesitantly because the last couple surveys didn't
Yeah.
generate any large returns. But certainly it'd be worth having a discussion with them if they have any ideas of how or when to get public involvement. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. And initially looking at it for having them here, it seems like it would make sense that they would come maybe after phase 2 and after phase 3, but I don't know what that intent is. That's something we're following up with them on, or if you guys have any thoughts further on that. Not to confuse the matter, but it's nice to have people putting their brains together and thinking through how this will work with a desired outcome.
It may be that since there's been the outreach and the comprehensive plan has been done, that having the analysis be a complete analysis of everything, and then come to the planning commission, and then also to look at what kind of feedback at that time might we want to have from the public. So we're being real specific, so that way the public's time is well used, and we can fit it in a way that's appropriate. And then I think the only other thing is that on the ground, sort of, if that needs to be done, is AML the best person to do that? Or is that something that another, a local person could do? I think that just needs to be discussed to see what, so we're using our resources to the best effect.
Yeah, on phase 3, when we're talking about the potential overlay districts or alternative zoning approaches. And it seemed like that had come up at an earlier meeting that it could be a whole different format, or I'm not even sure what the possibilities are. So that's just another part of the process to show us, open our eyes to those opportunities, I guess, or different ways of doing zoning.
Yeah, and you're correct,
Totally
that,
change the whole.
yeah.
Things are laid out. Yeah, okay.
that had come up in the discussion on the Malcolm Spillum subdivision. and
Yeah, right.
options For that,
The
and that kind of,
overlay, but alternative zoning approaches too, like, it'll be good to see what they. Yeah. But, Seldovia is just such a different place than the rest of the world, and it seems like having a little bit of knowledge of the actual place would be really helpful for them. And well, I guess I just see that on the notes and assumptions is travel costs and out-of-pocket expenses are not included and will be billed separately if incurred. So it doesn't look like they are really planning to do that. They have a drone come through or some remote.
If it's helpful, one of the team members has been here already multiple times through the comprehensive plan process. So there is a familiarity there.
Right, okay.
Which
That's
could
good.
be the advantage of jumping into this right after having that adopted. So
Yeah.
that there's still that awareness.
Won't be holding them in the water.
Right. Okay. Good.
Any other thoughts or comments? Henry, do you have any feedback?
Not right now.
and the full disclosure is Heidi and I did just get this draft this morning, so we haven't had all that much time to look through it either, but we wanted to make sure that the commission had a chance to weigh in, and plan was to get commission feedback as a matter of process, and then follow up with AML with any of these thoughts or questions. And then if the commission wanted to go this route, we could bring back a action memorandum or resolution at the May meeting, requesting that appropriation from the council in next year's budget. Is that correct, Heidi?
Correct, because it's there's a cost associated with this. It's a very reasonable cost. So that would be the next step, applicable step would be to just make sure that that's clear that the commission is requesting that the council appropriate funds to complete this project. And considering the fact that they've requested that you guys take this on and we've had those discussions, I don't foresee any kickback, but just making sure that we're doing the correct steps to allow for that process through legislation.
Okay, so you'll have some further discussions with AML and bring this back with a memorandum, and then work would not start until July 1st. Is that correct?
I don't think that that's necessary. I think we could start sooner but billing wouldn't begin until July 1. So if it's approved in May and then council approves it in their budget at the end of May, and then just knowing that if they start in June, they're not, we'll have to look at what that timeline
Okay,
looks like,
okay.
but certainly.
I didn't know if you were constrained in terms of doing activities out of the approved cycle.
There's a lot to do with delivery and when that occurs.
Okay.
So we'll look into that, but I would think that there would be some room to begin it sooner than later, but
Okay,
making sure that the budget's appropriated as of July 1.
Is there a timeline at all on this? Is it like they figured 2-3 months, or that'd be good to get, I guess, a general idea of.
I did not see a timeline on it.
Yeah, I see, hours per phase, but it's gotta be time for us to look at things as well, and yeah.
Yeah, and that might be good feedback from the commission as to what the appropriate timeline would look like for y'all to feel like you've got a good look at that, everything.
June, September. at least 4 months. It's, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, so potentially we could maybe look at starting in the end of May. Or having AML work on it starting at the end of May, and we can work through a timeline like for that time period.
Okay.
Is this on the phases? Is the sort of implication on this that they'll be done sequentially? Or are different people going to be working on this?
I haven't spoken to Britta directly, but it
Okay,
I'm making the assumption that it would be sequential,
okay. Okay. So,
and I'll clarify that as well.
so are you, would it be reasonable that this would be like a 3 to 4 month endeavor, maybe, or we could give it a little bit of flexibility and say 6 months? I mean, because obviously they have other projects, and so they're whatever their capacity is to absorb it, but it would be good to have a plan like from kickoff, anticipate 6 months of work. I mean, from end to end, but
Yeah,
so if they could just in the memorandum, if we could have a cost and work breakdown, and I mean, I guess we pretty much have the work breakdown, but to actually have a timeline on what that's going to look like. And
so I'm hearing is to circle back with AML on the timeline where public meeting fits in.
and then I guess the other thing that was under discussion was
In
the
person.
on the ground, so whoever, we need to identify who's going to take care of the on the ground sort of assessment. It could be AML, it could be somebody else, but just to I mean, it could be commissioners, might be I'm not saying it should be, I'm just saying, I just think if we should just assess that and see what could we do to make sure that whatever we're putting into this conversation, that we have good information so that we're making good decisions. And if we're seeing anything that's, concerning, or maybe there's some opportunities if we're looking at things and our zoning, just to, yeah. And then I guess in terms of the deliverable, it would be their summary of the analysis and the gaps and the recommendations, at least in terms of the things that we've talked about. Those are some of the elements of it. I mean, they can tweak that, but I think that's what we want to know in terms of this effort. Does that work? Does that sound like a good way to go forward? Henry, any thoughts on this? Just kind of the timeline work plan from AML?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
And AML has the resolution. I was just reading through. Yeah, that provides a pretty good framework of what we're looking for. Ooh, did the commission write this, or the not the commission,
The resolution.
city council? Yeah. And this the comprehensive. Oh, okay. I think, well, good.
It
Well
was
done.
sponsored by Councilmember Barber and Councilmember Coleman, so
Mhm.
they're both provided feedback and input on what they wanted in that resolution, yes.
Yeah,
And if I remember right, they had a very enthusiastic unanimous vote to move this your guys' way. So I think the impression was that there was a lot of support and looking forward to seeing this process be underway. Is that the impression you got?
Yes, there were some, yeah, Councilmember Barber had a very enthusiastic, yeah, I do recall.
Pretty well lays out a bunch of stuff, yeah.
Okay, and it's just, so think we're okay to wrap this one up then?
Yeah, and if any commission members look back through it and have additional feedback or additional questions for AML on that, we can circle back and set up a meeting and discuss the more in-depth, because this is a very preliminary scope. We just wanted to get something out there, and because this is a big and heavy lift, and you know,
Yeah.
could use the assistance.
Okay, and so the next item is staff reports.
Yeah, so we just have some of the upcoming and open condition business on here. And there isn't a whole lot of updates on the Cedar Street extension. We're still waiting on a site plan submission for that one. Accessory dwelling units, done some preliminary research on some of those and what might be applicable, and that could be part of the zoning code update. But I know that Chair Sweet, where you were working on a housing, does that fall under the accessory dwelling units? Did you want to discuss that?
So one of the things that the city council did was they asked for council member Coleman and me to work on and to be champions of the housing initiative with regard to the, what's in the comprehensive plan. So she and I will be meeting the third week in May to begin just kind of scoping what our approach might be, and then bring that back to the commission. So that will be starting in May. The accessory dwelling units, we can certainly put that. I hadn't thought about putting that into the housing, but that makes sense. So we'll just include that in our discussion, because it just makes sense to do that. Yeah, so.
And then as far as the alternative development standards go, some of that is going to be addressed in the comprehensive zoning review. And we're also independently are going to request feedback from the property owners in that subdivision as well.
And is AML going to be doing that, or is that going to be staff?
No, that was going to be myself.
Okay.
Wanted follow-up from the last meeting regarding what the expectations or wishes of the property owners themselves were,
Okay.
if we were undertaking those alternative development standards, what they might find as, barriers to development at this current state.
So I have a question on the alternative development standards. So right now, what we have is, like, the tools in our toolbox are variances, and then another tool would be to figure out what might be helpful in our community to these complex situations. And so those are at least the things that are sort of starting out in our conversations. And then as this whole process evolves, then we may have some other things come up in terms of possible solutions.
Yeah, and I think the solutions we've talked about before, some of the overlay districts,
Right.
and maybe some adjustments to parking. So those were, and then the water and sewer issues with the smaller lots that are off of our water and sewer mains. So
Okay, so
those were the three that were identified for that subdivision, but there are others, and parking is sometimes an issue for other spots and spaces as well in town. So,
okay. So we'll just sort of, that'll just be it's something that's on our plate and it's just being worked as we're going along, and it's and it's fitting into our sort of comprehensive plan and zoning analysis, and then other conversations that are being had will just sort of work their way into it. Thank you.
And then I put building permits back on here because we are in building permit season again. So we've had 3 permits come through so far. One that's been completed was for construction of, really phrase that. GCI has added equipment to the existing tower and some ground equipment. So there was a permit for that, and we've had 2 others that have been submitted with the possibility of maybe having a variance come before the commission, depending on the circumstances as well. And one of them is is waiting on finalizing a replat for the Leno property that's out it's the end of Vista Avenue, but so they have a permit in to build, but they're waiting on the final replat, which was combining the 2 lots. Well, so just to let you know, the building is starting and the building permits are out there, and
I heard that you had one for GCI adding stuff to the tower. The second one was,
there's one for a lot on Shoreline Drive. Which does have some parking. And I just got it. Some barriers to putting in those 2 parking spots that are required by code. So that may or may not be looking at a variance for that, depending on how the property owner decides to try to remedy that situation. And then the third one is for the Leno replat for the house that they're going to build.
And City Clerk Diamond, as through the chair, if you don't mind, are those, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe those 2 other proposals are both for new housing developments, new residential units? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, they're both for new residential unit. So those are the 3 so far. I expect some more to come, but this is kind of the beginning of it, and the first building permits that have utilized the new application and new standards that we've put in. So
And that's giving you some, just like a shakedown cruise for the way that the process is working, and
yeah, just kind of our internal tracking documents and putting together the midpoint and endpoint review checklists and stuff. So that's kind of the starting process of that.
I guess the shoreline property is opposite where Alex Chartier is and her daughter's house there, that where Madeline and Cutter used to live. So it's that lot has, I think it's about a 45-degree angle in terms of the slope, how that is going down. So I think that's going to require a PE to look at, in terms of, just because slope failure is definitely a concern in that situation. So at any rate, that's
Yeah.
there is,
Correct, yeah.
and it's a and then it's like that, you have a fairly narrow road, like 14 to 18 feet in that area, and then it's a busy place, and you've got a blind corner. So there's just we've talked about these complex issues, but so it has some things to consider as,
But yeah, that property owner will be in town in the next, I believe next month and kind of come up with a game plan. We'll see, but you said we require a PE? What would
I
that
think
show
so.
for?
I think, and I'm not, I believe the Alaska statutes, if you have certain conditions, and I don't know if it's dependent on the slope, but I think, so I think there's some requirements to make sure that you don't have slope failure. And obviously, because their home is down at the bottom of will be at the bottom of the slope. So I mean, there's the regulations and they're necessary and they provide requirements, but just from a safety standpoint, you would not want to have a building permit where you didn't know for sure that the slope was being managed so that it wouldn't fail and it wouldn't destroy the house. So so it's a factor, and we just need to check with the state on what that looks like. And then there may be some particular help or whatever that's available, but I think just like, when SVT did their building, I think that may have also been because it's a commercial building, but they had some issues with slope stability and they did some specific designs to make sure that was managed. So this, I think, is probably in that category.
Yeah, the communications tower is ongoing. I did receive a response back from the Office of Broadband. And they actually were not a super amount of help, but they did provide some other resources to work through for codes.
More carriers or what are they doing?
No, there was a request from the commission to just put in some guidelines for communication towers in general if they were to come up again, and for just some regulations on how that would go and what to look for within that. If that's not still the desire, then we can take that off list. But I think that was my impression. But yeah, right now there's no plan for another communication tower at this point in time. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything on there, but that was it. So if there's no questions on those, then I can turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, and then I guess the next item is city manager's update.
You guys ready for this? So, hot off the presses, you guys are the first to know. I love how this works out because I give the city manager's report to the council. And then by the time it comes to you, there's typically updates. And the fascinating thing about this week's is this went to council on Monday. And today is 2 days later and there's already updates. In particular, that I received the grant agreement for the Jackloff Bay dock today and signed it. So that we still have to wait for them to sign on their end, but I think that's a pretty quick turnaround. And once it's executed fully, we can ask for reimbursement for our pre-authorized or pre-award authorized expenses. And we're gonna hopefully move quickly through the next steps, or as quickly as manufacturing of floats will allow us. But the RFP is out and it closes on May 15th, and we're hoping we'll have some good proposals and be moving forward with this project in the next year and getting it done. The other projects that we've been making headway is I also received a signed agreement, so fully executed today from Kuna Engineering for the fuel and lube replacement project. and they'll be in town on Friday to do an initial site visit and inspection as part of that project. So that'll start moving quickly. And then the third one is the raw water transmission line is at 95% design. DEC approved it also today. Today was just a good news day. And they sent it ahead a notice of a notice to proceed. So that looks great. I under the impression I've been told that pretty much all of the parts and pieces for the project are here in the state, and that they're on schedule to begin that project in May. Those are our three major projects, all made significant gains today towards the finish line, and I'm looking forward to seeing two of those be hopefully completed this year, and then Jackloff next year. Other gains that we've made, Jackloff Uplands. I believe we mentioned this before, but if not, just making sure that you guys have awareness that we did sign the entry authorization, and we're going through the steps now to do a survey. We're required to have a survey and an appraisal for that property, and the council has requested to do a phase 1 environmental study for the area. So we're going to go out for quotes for those and work on that process. In the meantime, they had a work session on Monday, the city council did, just to discuss the fee schedule. And part of that was that they requested that an initial fee schedule be implemented for Jackloff. So it's in there right now. And if they pass it in May, then we would be looking at July 1. And so we'll do an educational campaign beforehand so people aren't surprised. But looking at July 1, having some fees associated with parking in Jackloff. They put a 3-day grace period in there for people who are just coming and going. And so no charge for day parking or up to 3 days. And then some relatively smaller fees for monthly and annual pass, but hoping to ensure that people are not leaving vehicles stagnant out there. So even with that annual pass, there's a desire to see vehicles moving regularly to allow space for parking. So that's something you guys will see here in the future. And I'm thinking clean up as well. Yep. We have a list of 6 vehicles that are could be, according to our code, public nuisances. And then of course the trailer. So that's on my list. I just haven't made it to that, but it's in the next couple of weeks to work through that process and then get those cleaned up and out of there.
You don't wanna make a nice little cafe out of it?
I think the plan at this point is to dispose of them and clean up the area. They did also include in that fee schedule camping, because we do know we have active camping out there. And though that might be a little more difficult this year because the part of the dock that was removed is staged there. It was still recommended that it be included because there are people who will just, pitch a tent and hang out there, which is fine. But making sure that we're kind of managing that process as well, especially with potentially the upcoming, cleanup and construction and things happening at the area. So
Is there a map that shows the property? Because I've always been under the impression that it was just a strip of land around the road. So
right.
it's bigger now.
Yeah, we have a map. It's actually, the parcel is twice the size of what the lot is that we're looking to lease.
Oh, okay.
Because it was split for this application. So yes, I have a map and I can provide it to you.
All right. Yeah, that'd be great to see.
I'll make a note to bring that.
What about restrooms? Are they gonna put new restrooms in?
Mhm.
So, not in the initial discussion at this point, but I know that Mako's did present at a recent city council meeting. Mako Haggerty himself came over and provided public comment in support of the initiative for the city to keep those uplands as public. And he did offer that he would like to help support building a pavilion for people to be able to stay dry and stage in while they're waiting for a boat. So would assume we'll get back to him and have that discussion on what that looks like. But no, really more focused on cleanup and accessibility at this point, and then expanding. I know the harbor masters talked about, eventually it would be nice if we had an actual boat launch ramp there like we do in town. There's definitely different things that could be done. But for now, the focus seems to be making sure it's cleaned up and accessible. Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, making that note, bring back Jackloff map. So those are the big three projects. Some other projects we have happening is we have 2 active aqua grants for some stormwater and infrastructure improvements. One on Main Street, which is actually 2 project areas that we're now calling Main Street North and Main Street South. Main Street North is the one that goes kind of from by City Park to across that harbor boat launch ramp, and then the other Main Street South being by the Gateway Pavilion. And there's been just some holdups and delays, some additional costs in working with DOT because the Main Street infrastructure, street and stormwater drains are our Main Street, or I mean our state infrastructure. So we're pivoting a little bit and ensuring that we have the requirements that the additional stipulations that they have to complete those projects in the future, and then looking at completing Main Street South independently with just utilizing city property and infrastructure, because where it turns on that road it turns into city road. So just a little curveball and working through that, and a good reminder that, this is a state street. And as they liked to remind me, well, I don't know if they like to, but as they did remind me on the call, that we are unique because we are a rural community with urban services, so an urban infrastructure. So that was fun.
I think that's a really good analysis of where we are and why we seem to be unique in a lot of conversations that we come to.
Yeah. So it was a good reminder. Other projects we're working on, some new stairs for the back of this building, and some freezers and things for senior meals. We are we had a alternatives memorandum for the water and wastewater system evaluation project, and that'll move through to the preliminary engineering phase. The SBFD repeater at the school is supposedly fixed, going back and forth on that one. Ended up being an issue with equipment on the Homer side, so they're just wrapping that up. We did submit the pre-application for the hydrology and wetlands assessment. If you remember, we applied for that last year in partnership with KB NER and their partners. We didn't receive it, but we received great feedback, and it opened again. And so in speaking with KB NER and their partners, their team is still fully on board with seeing us be able to complete this project. So we did that initial pre-application submission, and we're hoping that we'll get an invitation to the full application. And if we receive that, we'll proceed with that part of the process, and hopefully receive some funding, because it would be, especially with knowing the issues that we're having in East Edition with damming and ice damming and flooding, that if you guys had the chance to see our stormwater management plan that we did just a couple of years ago, last year, it hasn't been very long. What I didn't realize, and it's been an advantage to have that plan for a lot of things, for our stormwater infrastructure projects that we're working on, but also it was useful because we started having this flooding issue in that neighborhood. And I could look back at that plan and identify that that's actually our largest water basin in this community, which I didn't realize. And so all of that water, all of those hundreds of thousands of gallons of water is trying to move through that neighborhood. And with the deep freeze and ice, it's been an interesting winter. We also have we've been notified of several water services that are frozen, a couple sewer services that are having issues. I saw a post from the city of Homer recently, I think it was just last week, that their public works had identified on the Homer side, at least, that when they were digging to make repairs to mains that they had bursting, that and we had one this year ourselves, that they were seeing about 8 feet of frost in the ground, which it's deep. So and of course, we're still reminding people to run their water, because as it warms up, that frost is just
Still there.
settling in deeper. So certainly watch your water services and keep them running if you have any inclination that there could be an issue with them freezing. And let's see, we applied for two rural tribal assistance grants, and we did not receive them, and that was for the historic boardwalk improvements, preliminary design and engineering, and then the harbor boardwalk, the new project. Like I said, unfortunately, we didn't receive those. They had so many submissions, they didn't even review our application. But we'll apply again next time. It's a first come, first serve. The other thing that we are working on is there is a Safe Streets for All action grant that's open now. And the city council did designate appropriate funds to work with Alaska Municipal League as our grant writer, as a grant writer for some projects. They'll do a minimum of 3 grant applications a year. And this is one that they have identified would be a good opportunity for those projects. So we're looking at submitting an application next month for those boardwalk, maybe a combined approach for the historic boardwalk and then the harbor waterfront boardwalk expansion project, as well as they are working on sorry, I just blanked, another grant for us for the dam. The dam is certainly one of my top priorities. It's one priority that the council has identified in their capital improvement plan. We have a periodic safety inspection for it every 3 years. We haven't made repairs to it in, I think, at least a decade. And so every year it's rated poor. It's in poor condition. And every 3 years we redo the safety inspection, and it's not getting any better because there's no work being done to
Is
it.
this the
So,
reservoir you're talking about?
yes.
Not the Fish Creek Dam.
No, the Fish Creek Dam, we also applied for a project,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the
big-
actual reservoir has some areas that have been identified for a decade now that are in need of not silt. You'd be surprised. We had somebody camera it. That's not necessarily so bad. Just some pitting in the spalling, some boards that we need replaced, some resurfacing on the inside. And then the whole spillway is covered with algae and degrading. So there's some maintenance that needs to be done. And hoping that the BRIC, which is Building Resilient Infrastructure Communities, something like that, will be a good opportunity for that project. And we're thankful that AML is working with us on it.
Putting that placard on the dam. I'm a year older than
That's it.
you. Look at me. I'm still going strong.
Doing great. And I'm sure you haven't had any checkups or work to help that.
So I have a question on
Uh-huh.
dam. So is there any imminent danger, and is there any danger towards anybody below the dam?
That's a great question. So our rating for our dam, and I'm so sorry, I really don't have a great working memory when it comes to numbers. I would have to actually look back at the actual numbers, but there's like you're like a phase 1, 2, 3, or whatever type.
There's a there's a
Category.
risk rating.
Exactly. And our risk rating did go up about 6 years ago with the periodic inspection 2 times ago, due to the fact of the airport infrastructure below. There's that little house that's sitting up by Fish Creek. Just some more activity, the new shop that's down there. So our risk rating did go up, and that's why we have to do the PSI every 3 years instead of every 5 years. And we are required to have, no, you can put it up there if you want. And we are required to have a like a emergency operations plan with it. And that's something that's still in the works. That hasn't been completed.
So
It's in poor condition. It's fun, and there needs to be an emergency action plan.
So, and would the fire department be the one that would be responding, or who would or maintenance, Seldovia maintenance team? So,
It would be all hands on deck.
okay. And I guess, and,
Yep.
and
They're gonna have a new raw water line coming from the reservoir,
Mm.
but the dam itself is.
Needs work. And the
And
raw
it's a-
water line isn't the whole raw water line. It's just the lower 1,050 feet. The upper 1,800 feet was replaced in the 80s, but is also getting to the end of its lifespan. So part of our water and sewer system evaluation that we're doing through Village Safe Water, through CRW is the engineering firm working on that, includes the dam and the upper portion of the raw water transmission line for that preliminary engineering assessment. So those should also be included in that project, because we've identified those as needs, as priorities in the community. Along with that one includes water and sewer for Vista, water for Anderson, where it's been dead-ended out here, water main on, these are all the areas they're evaluating, water main on Dock Street, the water main over on Airport Avenue and on Main Street, and the sewer on Block Street. Some of the areas that we've identified over the years that are in need of assistance. So I'm looking forward to seeing that project be completed, because that'll hopefully give us a really good leg up to getting some actual construction funding once we have that preliminary engineering report done for those various areas. So yes, other projects, we are still looking at the Fish Creek Dam. We received 200, well, we didn't receive, Trout Unlimited received $240,000 for the engineering and design of that project, that they're utilizing to leverage for Denali Commission supporting USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service Programs and Partners project. And that's for the Fish Creek assessment. And also included with that is an assessment, an initial phase for looking at acquisition of Trina Lake and potentially the Trina Lake properties and potentially the property around the water treatment plant. I think I said this at the last meeting that we did receive funding for a new piece of heavy equipment. So we're looking at replacing our backhoe. We were not awarded the rebate for the multi-purpose building siting or for the harbor master's office. They need a new boiler and some other thermal envelope work. So we'll have to look at another measure for that. But overall, I feel like we can say we've been fairly successful, and we're making progress and gains on some of the council's priorities and projects in their capital improvement plan. And we'll look forward as we move. They're in the budget process right now, so that's why they discussed the fee schedule. The next work session will be on their capital project budget, or the capital budget, and wanting to make sure that we're utilizing the comprehensive plan as well as their capital improvement plan, and that those are tying into those discussions about capital budget, so that those priorities are being met, and being planned for, taking care of those needs. So I really appreciate everybody's hard work on that. And I know it seems like, oh, another planning document, or it can, but I think it's already showing value, as you guys go through your review, and I think it will also have a lot of value when we start talking, or when the council, I should say, starts talking about capital projects and funding. Also throwing out there, we are doing a water meter pilot program. So anybody in city limits that has interest, we only have 10 water meters, and we're looking at a good cross section of customers. So not everybody who's interested may receive a meter, but if people are interested, we're asking them to reach out to the city, and utilizing this pilot program as a way to assess what water usage really is in this community for those different customer types. We've had some positive and some negative feedback. I think there's been some concerns out there that this is, going to be another burden on the customers and another cost for people to incur. I could understand where that sentiment comes from. But I think council's tried to make it very clear that at this time, that's not necessarily the interest. It could be a future discussion of whether water meters are a benefit or not, but really trying to utilize this pilot program to have some accurate readings of what's happening across those customer types, and have that conversation for future rate schedules and just overall health of the system. We also are looking at installing a web camera through the Alaska Ocean Observing System on the city building, looking over the city dock. And that's to help monitor the ocean and weather, and the dock itself activity. Ferries, the ferry can use it when they're coming in and out. Kind of a cool opportunity. We're hoping to do one at Jackaloff as well, but that doesn't seem like that's going to be as likely. There's some power issue out. There's not as easy accessibility to power out there, but maybe in the future. SVFD had their meeting, and they elected, and that's the Seldovia Volunteer Fire and EMS Department. And they did elect their fire chief, a new fire chief, Travis Jordan. So if you see him around, tell him thank you, as well as Keith Swick stepped up to be the deputy fire chief. So that's exciting. They also approved a new logo and their FY26 and FY27 budget. And excitingly, this impacts some of you. They approved their implementing the Guardian Flight group membership for their members as an incentive. And so because of that, and because they still have budget in there, they still have money and funds in their budget for this fiscal year, we didn't want them to miss out on utilizing those funds. So the city went ahead and stood up the program, and has hopefully reached out. If you haven't heard from us, let us know, but I believe we reached out to all our electeds, our appointeds, our city employees, to provide that opportunity. And those envelopes with your information for your membership should be showing up in your mailbox any day. So that's exciting. And we already talked about the AML grant writing and the budget process for council. I guess last couple things I would touch base on are that the FY25 audit is underway. And that's a great, tool that we utilize to assess how we're doing in the city. And then that also helps inform the budget. And CISPRI, if you guys recognize that name, that's the coconut oil or coconut spill response. Inc. Has changed their name. They're now Alaska Response Corporation, and they had a Tidelands permit update to change that name. So if you hear us start talking about ARC or getting confused between ARC and CISPRI, it is now ARC. And we have a VPSO position, not us, but API does, posted around. Amy Morgan did resign from her position and is no longer acting as a VPSO in this community. So I definitely want to wish her the best in her future endeavors. And if you guys know anybody who's interested in being a VPSO, we can provide that advertisement, and it's also around town. And I've just been letting people know that I'm trying to take some Fridays off this month. I don't know, this Friday may not work out with Kuna coming into town. And then I'll be away next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as I chaperone some of our students at the school going to Juneau for the Alaska Association of Student Government Spring Conference. So I'll be out for that if you're looking for me. I should still be available by email, and then I'll be back. And one more fun thing, I believe I mentioned it before, but just a reminder because it's out here, that the KB Nurse, speaking of them, they did receive funding, sustainable salmon funding. So they're looking at having a few meetings here in the community coming up, and then doing a 3-year assessment of salmon and their habitat in the Seldovia Slough. So that'll be fun to see them around. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I think that's pretty much summarizes the projects that we're working
What does
through.
that stand for? The KBNER?
So that's the Kachemak Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve.
Well done.
Woohoo.
To get that.
Could I add
That rolls
one
off
more
the
thing?
tongue.
Yes, please do.
So just at the Monday City Council meeting, the Seldovia City Council approved the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
So since this was not updated for that, I wanted to say that's where that set is. So the city council has approved it, and it will be forwarded on to the planning department at the borough, hopefully for borough adoption here pretty soon. So just wanted to keep you all informed of where that is in the process. And thank you all for your work on that.
Congratulations to everybody.
Still didn't get both your R's in there, but that's all right. In
Research Reserve.
research reserve, okay.
I'll
I
let
can
you
remem-
know
I
next
can-
time they come into town. You
Yeah.
can meet them. They're really fascinating. A lot of good work happening.
And so that's also the group that's doing something on Trina Lake.
Yeah, they have interest out
Nice.
there. And they're the ones that are helping us submit an application for the wetlands and hydrology project. So
Fish out here too, or
they know ADF and G plants the fish,
still doing?
as far as I know. Yep.
All right.
So we're good with that item, and then any comments from the public? Doesn't look like we have any. And any comments from the commission?
One member of the public, but I don't see their hand being raised online. So
Okay, if the person that's online wants to make a comment, you can raise your hand. And no hand raising, so thank you for attending. And then any comments from the commission? Henry, any comments?
Looks good so far.
Thank you.
Have comments, but it's good to be here in person. Glad to be back.
Yeah. And then our next meeting is, will be on May 6th, 2026. And then we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion.
And second,
I can second that.
And then do we do this? I always get tripped up with this.
No, if
No-
there's no objection.
No
we can
objections,
adjourn.
then we are adjourned at 7:14. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And welcome back, Allison.